I'm Joe Quinn, and this is the SOT Report. Terrorism. Can you remember a time when that wasn't a household word? To be honest, I'm pretty pissed off about terrorism and the alleged terrorist threat. But I'm not pissed off at the terrorists. What I'm pissed off at is the fact that major Western governments and media corporations have spent the last 10 years attempting to shove the purported reality of Islamic terrorism down my throat, and your throat. You see, having done a lot of research into this threat, having scrutinised the details, it has become pretty clear to me that the terrorist threat does not, in fact, exist, at least not in the way US and Western governments would have us believe. That's why I'm pissed off. I don't like being lied to, and I really don't like seeing the entire human population of this planet being lied to by a handful of government, media and corporate crooks. What about you? Do you like being lied to? Maybe you don't even know you're being lied to. After all, if you have precious little time to do any research yourself, you're forced to accept as truth what you read in the papers and watch on the mind-numbing evening news. If that describes you, then you may well be of the opinion that there actually is a terrorist threat to speak of. Let's run through a few of the facts and the cases that constitute the meat and bones of the supposed reality of Islamic terrorism, and then you can make up your own mind. I'm not going to start with 9/11 because I understand that 9/11 conspiracy theories have been cast as the domain of wild-eyed nutjobs. So instead, I'll focus on a few more minor cases. Afterwards, you may have a new perspective from which to consider the 9/11 attacks, if you want to. So first, let's go back to 2006 and the case of the Miami 7, or the Liberty City 7. Do you remember this one? No, of course you don't. That's part of the problem. Liberty City is a neighborhood in Miami City, Florida, and is as close to a black ghetto as you might get in the glorious US of A. Living quietly in a warehouse in Liberty City were 7 intellectually challenged young men who called themselves the Seeds of David, or the Seeds of David, depending on which one you asked. Describing themselves as Christian, Zionist, Muslim, martial artist immigrants, I kid you not, they were quietly awaiting the fulfillment of the biblical end times prophecy. It's not surprising, therefore, to hear that the alleged leader of the group, one Narcil Batiste, needed psychiatric help, according to his father. But then along comes an undercover FBI agent calling himself Brother Muhammad. Yeah, how original. Using complex psychological profiling, the FBI determined that poor people like money. So Brother Muhammad offered these Christian, Zionist, Muslim, martial artist immigrants $50,000. As it turned out, this, and only this, got the men's attention. Nevertheless, the FBI's Brother Muhammad had an agenda to make terrorists out of these young men, so he probed a little deeper. Would they like to engage in military training? For 50 grand? Sure, said the guys. The only problem is, we don't have any weapons or explosives or anything like that. Hey, we don't even have boots. No problem, says Brother Muhammad. He can get them some boots. So, equipped now with shiny new military boots, how would they feel about taking some pictures of the Sears Tower in Chicago and, say, an FBI building, for example? For 50 grand? Sure, said the guys. The only problem is we don't have any cameras and, by the way, we don't own any cars. No problem, says Brother Muhammad. He can get them a video camera and rent them a car. So now, what about a little Al-Qaeda swearing-in ceremony? For 50 grand? Sure, why not? We really like money. So a few of the men half-heartedly repeat an Al-Qaeda oath. All of these details were either recorded secretly or testified to by the FBI agent afterwards, and then, at the appointed time, the men are arrested and brought to trial. On news of the arrests, 2 Liberty City community activists summed it up by saying that everyone in Liberty City is joking that the guys are going to kick down the FBI building with their new boots because they didn't have any devices which could have been used to explode. At the time, Knight Ridder News reported that the Justice Department unveiled the arrests with an orchestrated series of news conferences in 2 cities, but the severity of the charges compared with the seemingly amateurish nature of the group raised concerns among civil libertarians, who noted that the group had no weapons, no explosives, and yet the government considered the arrests a major announcement. The first 2 trials were a bust. The jury couldn't decide if there was even a case against the men. But the US government persisted, and on the 3rd attempt in 2009, 5 of the men were sentenced to long prison terms for, and I quote, planning to wage a full ground war against the United States. These guys, no boots, no money, no cars, no cameras, nothing, but according to the US government, planning to wage a full ground war against the United States. All of this is for your benefit. You are meant to believe that those guys were planning to wage a full-ground war against the United States with nothing but an empty warehouse and an IQ of about 200 between all of them. Moving on. The Fort Dix Six, remember that one? Of course you don't. 6 guys sentenced to long prison terms in December 2008 for terrorism and conspiracy to harm US military personnel. Why? All in their 20s, the 6 were contacted by an undercover FBI agent, and having literally no plans or resources to wage any terror campaign, the FBI took them through almost exactly the same process as the Miami 7. One of the Fort Dix Six even called the police and told them that a man, the undercover FBI agent, was pressuring him into obtaining a map of the US military base at Fort Dix, and that he feared the incident was terrorist related. Yeah, pretty much. What kind of terrorist calls the police and tells them that he's afraid he might be pressured into terrorism? Does that sound like a wild-eyed terrorist to you? Nevertheless, 5 of the 6 were sentenced to life terms in prison. The Portland 7, the Newburgh 4, the Temple Terror Plot, the Houthari militia, and on it goes. Literally dozens of terror events that have subtly framed your erroneous belief that there actually is an Islamic terrorist threat. Look them up, and you'll quickly realise that they all involve the FBI approaching vulnerable and often mentally unstable young men and taking them through a process that they would never have independently followed, whereby they are essentially entrapped and ultimately accused of being very unlikely terrorists. You want an example of something a little more recent? How about the underwear bomber of 2009? Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib, the 23-year-old who was escorted through security checks without a passport at Amsterdam airport by a well-dressed man, who appeared on the plane drugged according to passengers, and then tried to set fire to his underwear in flight. Conclusion? The Muslim terror threat is real, of course. A few weeks ago, the Portland car bomb plot. Here was a teenage Somali American, Osman Mohammed, taken through the same FBI grooming procedure over a 6-month period. Think about that. The FBI needs 6 months to convince one naive teenager to become a terrorist. Surely they can do better than that. It was revealed that Osman had little terroristic inclinations other than juvenile bravado and absolutely no resources to carry out any attack. The FBI agent, posing as a terrorist, recruits him for an alleged attack on the Christmas tree lighting ceremony in Portland, Oregon. The bomb is 6 empty plastic barrels in the back of a van. The kid's role is to dial a cell phone number to set off the bomb from a nearby car. When he dials the number and the bomb fails to detonate, the FBI agent sitting beside him suggests that he get out of the car for better coverage, at which point he is arrested. That was the sum total of this young guy's involvement, other than being manipulated by the FBI. But here's the problem. The only thing that you know or hear about such events is headlines like Somali-born teen plotted car bombing in Oregon. This is a load of bull, but that's the way this story was reported over and over again. But get this, Arthur Balazan, the FBI supervisor in Oregon, told the press that the threat was very real. Then we learned from the White House spokesman Nick Shapiro that President Obama was aware of the FBI operation before the arrest, and that he was assured that the FBI was in full control of the operation, and that the public was not in danger.
All new this morning, federal authorities have arrested a Somali-born teenager who attempted to blow up a car bomb at Portland's Christmas tree lighting ceremony. Mohammed Osman Mohammed was arrested last night after he failed to detonate a van filled with explosives. Authorities first learned of Mohammed's plot back in June after he contacted an unindicted associate in Pakistan. They say the explosives were not active and that the public was never in danger.
Threat very real, but public not in danger. And you believe this crap? But I was thinking, why stop at manipulating a teenager into dialing a cell phone number and then arresting him as a terrorist? Since the FBI created this from scratch, couldn't they come up with something a little more dramatic? A little more headline catching, since that appears to be the whole point? So here's an idea. With Obama's collaboration, the FBI could assure a date at the White House. Then the FBI finds some disaffected, psychologically troubled young African American, takes him through the normal process of offering him money, swearing him into the FBI's branch of Al-Qaeda, and then they tell him that the plot is to kill the president. They could give him a plastic replica gun and, on the appointed day, lead him into the Oval Office and have him point the gun at the president and pull the trigger. Then they have security jump on him and, hey presto, 3 solid weeks of headlines screaming, Muslim terrorist attempts to assassinate the president. Portland car bomb plot was, like virtually all others, manufactured and orchestrated by the US government. Look at the details and you cannot reach any other conclusion. The tactic of turning ordinary people into terrorists is, however, nothing new for the FBI. As part of the counterintelligence program, or COINTELPRO, in the 50s, 60s and 70s, the FBI used the very same tactics against human rights and social equality groups such as the Black Panthers.
The police department had infiltrated the Panther 21, and the highly publicized, highly touted trial of 21 members of the Panther Party for allegedly plotting to blow up department stores turned out to be a total hype, entire harassment, entrapment by the FBI, where it was revealed that FBI agents had infiltrated the Panthers, and the people behind any ideas of a plot to blow up anything were all government agents.
All of these staged terror attacks constitute clear documented evidence that the US government is more than willing to manufacture terrorism in order to pursue its long-term agenda of population control and war. In light of this, I'd like to know why it is so hard for people to accept the possibility, just the possibility, that the 9/11 attacks were also an act of manufactured terrorism. It is vitally important that you understand the truth about government-manufactured terror threat. Why? Because it is the root cause of almost everything else that is going wrong on this planet today. The banking crisis, rising unemployment, mortgage defaults and loss of homes, the terror threat. Because the terror threat led to the illegal invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan and the $1 trillion that those bloody adventures have cost the US economy so far. Restrictions on freedoms, airport gropings and Nazi-style airport security, the terror threat. 1.5 million slaughtered civilians in Iraq and 1.2 million in Afghanistan, the terror threat. And then there is this.
Yeah, roger, I just estimated there's about 20 of them. There's one, yeah. Oh, yeah. Correct. Bandage about 4 route 3. I don't know if that's...
Neighbor's Metro Element, copy at White 6.
That's a weapon. Yeah.
What's the stage line?
Let me know when you gather. What shoot? Light them all up.
202 traffic, 260.
Come on, fire.
Hey, roger.
Keep shoot. Keep shoot.
Bushmaster 2-6, Bushmaster 2-6. We need to move time now.
The Hotel 26, Crazy Horse, 1-8. Oh yeah, look at those dead bastards. Nice. 26, Crazy Horse, 1-8.
Roger, that's a negative on evac at the two civilian kids to Rusty. They're going to have the IPs link up with us over here, break. And IPs will take them up to a local hospital, over. That's your copy, over. Roger that. I think so.
Oh, it's their fault for bringing their kids to a battle. That's right. Roger. Break. Crazy Horse 1-8. Request permission to engage. Picking up the wounded. Yeah, we're trying to get permission to engage. Come on, let us shoot. A Bushmaster, Crazy Horse 1-8. You're taking him. Bushmaster, Crazy Horse 1-8.
Along with everything else, what you have just seen is the indirect result of your belief in this clearly bogus, manufactured terror threat. There are two wars being waged: a physical war against innocent people and a more subtle war for your mind. As long as the government continues to win the war for your mind and is able to convince you that their bogus terror threat is real, innocent people will continue to die in your name. While there's little we can do to stop the bloodshed in Iraq and Afghanistan, we can fight and win the war for our own minds. We can stop believing government propaganda and lies that have always served to enrich a corrupt few at the expense of you and me. This is the SOT Report. We'll be back next week.